right, welcome in everybody here inside Jordan-Hare Stadium, auburnundercover.com. Jason Caldwell, I am Nathan King. We are getting ready for Auburn's homecoming game against Samford, 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN+. Jason, Auburn will be very happy to be back in the friendly confines today after gutting out a win at Cal over the weekend. This is very much the word tune-up opportunity, tune-up game, is thrown out a lot with these non-Power 5 FCS games. This really is one of those for Auburn because after this, 7 straight SEC games. So this is really an opportunity, particularly on offense, against this probably should be the worst defense they'll play this year. And so you should, theoretically, we'll see what the weather does. If that has an effect on it, you should be able to open up this passing game a little bit and try to work out some of the kinks from last week. Yeah, no, this is, you're right, the opportunity. When you start talking about trying to get right, this is an opportunity to get right. The big question I have going into this one is, what is the energy level like? Because it's been a long week for these guys. I talked to a couple of coaches, a couple of players this week, and they're like, hey, it took us to like Thursday to kind of get that sluggishness out. We know the feeling. It took us about that long as well. How's the energy level tonight? It should be good. You only have a few of these opportunities, and you're right. To me, this is all about what do we see from Auburn's offense? What do we see from Peyton Thorne in that passing attack? Do we see some different wide receiver combinations together? Do we see Jay Fair and Var Johnson? Yeah. I do think, though, that the one thing we're going to see is more of those targets to the playmaker guys. We haven't seen a bunch of that early on. I think you got to get the ball in the hands of your best players and see what happens. Yeah, the thing is about Auburn's passing game having its struggles, I think definitively they have, but Peyton Thorne is dead last in the SEC in pass attempts right now among starting quarterbacks. Jay Fair is your leading receiver. He's got 7 catches. And so while, yes, they have struggled, I don't think this staff necessarily has a lot of data on how this stuff has worked. And we knew all offseason with this read-based system, it takes a little bit to get going. And we talked about it this week, having the opportunity to just kind of sling it around. We kind of likened it to that game against Mercer back in 2017 where they came home from a rough game against Clemson. Jarrett Stidham throws enough passes to set the SEC single game completion percentage record. You feel like they can run the ball. They're pretty confident running the ball. But you mentioned it, Jason, that receiving core, I think Shane Hooks is a guy we're still waiting on. Jair Shorter doesn't have a reception yet, if I'm not mistaken. And so some playmakers that, look, there's a couple sides to this equation, and one of them is getting these receivers on the right track. I agree. And you're right. You're talking about the lack of pass attempts. When you turn it over a bunch and you have penalties that kill drives, you don't allow. We heard Hugh Freeze talk about the tempo. It's hard to get in tempo if you don't get a first down or you don't have I take that back, a positive play on first down. If you're second and long, then it changes what you're doing on offense. And so that's the thing. Can you stay ahead of the chains? Can you get some rhythm going? There was no rhythm on offense last week. They had pretty good rhythm in week 1. Can you find a way to get rhythm? And, hey, obviously everything changes again next week against Texas A&M. But if you come out and have the same issues today, then you start to throw some red flags up. So you need to be able to execute today against Samford. There's not necessarily a point right now where you should think there needs to be any wholesale changes. Again, it's a system that's in its infancy on offense. Yes, it's an experienced quarterback. Yes, you want to see him make better decisions because that's why he won the job, and Freeze would be the first to admit he hasn't done a great job of that. But this is, like we talked about all week, kind of a net crack opportunity to really kind of charge ahead and be ready for that SEC opener next week. There's not a lot to complain about on the defensive side of the ball. Getting healthy is going to be we talked about it in week 1, just getting healthy. Getting healthy is going to be a big goal, but they'll be tested a little bit. Michael Hires is a really good FCS quarterback, and Hatcher, the Samford head coach, known for his passing concepts. They're going to get guys in space. Probably won't be a competitive game, but they'll at least have to run around a little bit and make some plays. Yeah, this is the day for me. Jalen McLeod, Steven Sings, Elijah McAllister, Eugene Asante, some of those guys, but I want to see some pressure from the Auburn front 4 without having to send linebackers, without having to send, guys. We may not see Donovan Kaufman today. Who knows? I'd kind of be surprised if we do, even if he's good. But, defensively, it's just can you build on what you've done and can you get more snaps for, guys like there are lots of those guys. When you think about it, Keldrick Faulk's probably number 1. Can you get more snaps for Keldrick Faulk? Can you get him more involved? Zacchaeus Walker has done some good things in small packages so far this year. Can you get those guys involved and then, get Nehemiah Pritchett back out there? You mentioned health. In the end, it all kind of comes back to health. How healthy are they? And, Jalen McLeod ready to turn it loose. This might be a big day for him. Going a little bit back to the offense, Jason, the running back rotation is something Hugh Freeze talked about this week. He knew how deep this running back group would be in the offseason, but he admitted, he said, look, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to try to get all these guys their fair share of carries. So far, Jeremiah Cobb, the 4-star freshman, he's been a little too good to keep off the field. He's been a little bit too explosive. Jarquez Hunter, Freeze admitted he was rusty, kind of missing some holes, not looking like his normal self. He'll kind of work his way back after missing that first game of the season. Then Brian Battie only had 1 carry, and so I know they didn't play a bunch of plays that obviously factored into it, but that's another thing I'm looking for on offense. They shouldn't have trouble running the ball. To me, today is less about the yardage and more about them continuing to find a plan for these running backs, because all 4 of these guys probably need to play for them to have success.
Yeah, and the key is getting tempo, getting personnel, running plays, because if you only run 50 plays, you can't throw the ball a bunch and then get touches from 4 running backs. It's an impossibility. And so that's part of everything building on. But it all comes back to something you mentioned earlier. It all comes back to a quarterback that's in now game 3, didn't go through the spring, new wide receivers in those situations. You got a lot of guys that are trying to kind of figure it out, and when you're trying to figure it out, you don't play fast. They got to get to a situation where maybe you cut it down a little bit and say, look, we're going to do some maybe smaller things that we're going to spread out on offense, but we're going to do them really good, and we're going to execute them and do it fast. That may be what it comes down to, and it may start today. Yeah,
execution is going to be kind of the name of the game today. You never know. Samford is over the Florida, Mississippi State. They've given some teams trouble, but today,
if you open the door, they'll take it.
Exactly. Well-coached team, experienced quarterback. But it should be a good Auburn victory on homecoming tonight. We'll have all your coverage over on auburnundercover.com. I want to bring in our recruiting reporter, though, Christian Clemente. Christian, good bit of visitors, and Jason as well. Good bit of visitors for this team today. I'll get Christian to come in here and talk about on homecoming.
Absolutely. Guys, we saw. Chris, we were on the road last night. We saw 2 Auburn commitments go head-to-head, and Perry Thompson and Bryce Kane. Perry Thompson will be here today. Part of a really good group for a Samford game. And the second game, not a surprise with this staff, but they're scheduled to be some really good players here.
It was kind of surprising to me. I thought, UMass was pretty strong. I thought it would dip a little bit. Samford, middle of the season, a little bit more. Not the season opener, maybe not as strong. Instead, you've got Kevin Riley, a Miami running back commit.
Yep.
You've got a USC commit supposed to come in. You've got a Clemson commit that's supposed to be here. You've got an Alabama commit in the upcoming 2025 class. So you've got a good group of 2024s, including a tight end coming across the country.
Yeah, from Utah.
For an unofficial visit, so he's paying for it before his official visit later in the year. And then you've got a ton of strong younger guys, just like we talked about with the UMass game. Similar story. Neem Offord, Jordan Crawford, guys like those.
Correct.
Really talented that you can spend a good chunk of time with.
That's it. That's what today gives you. It gives you an opportunity to spend time with guys. And Kevin Riley is a guy that will get a ton of attention when he steps on campus. And they're looking for that second running back. That's a guy that they've been on for a while, committed to Miami right now. But Kevin Riley from Tuscaloosa is a guy that should get plenty of attention. You mentioned Neem Offord from 25, one of the top players in the country. From Parker High School there in Birmingham. So, it should be a good day. It's an interesting day. Opportunity for these guys. Got 3 basketball visitors, all unofficials, but one of the top players in the country. Kid from the Huntsville area, Caleb Holt, is a 2026 prospect. Already a top 10 player in the country, a top 10 player in the country for 2025 as well. So a little basketball news, a lot of football news, and we'll have a bunch of that tonight into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday as well. There'll be lots of things to talk about. Recruiting, game coverage. Check us out, Auburn.